For my entire life, I believed my mother didn't want me. And then, 3 months ago, I opened a package that proved I was wrong about everything. My name is Catherine. I'm 76 years old. I was adopted when I was 3 days old, and I spent 76 years wondering why the woman who gave birth to me chose to let me go. Last winter, I received a box from an attorney I'd never met. Inside was a leather journal, worn at the edges, filled with my mother's handwriting. She'd been writing to me since the day I was born. And she died 2 months ago, having never sent it, having watched my entire life from a distance I didn't know existed. I grew up in Portland, Oregon in the 1950s. My adoptive parents, Robert and Helen, were good people. They never hid the fact that I was adopted. From the time I was old enough to understand, they told me I was chosen, that I was wanted, that my birth mother had loved me enough to give me a better life. They meant well. But when you're a child, all you hear is that someone gave you away. All you understand is that the person who was supposed to love you most decided you weren't worth keeping. I had a good childhood by most measures. My parents gave me everything I needed: a safe home, an education, love in their own way. But there was always this space inside me, this question I couldn't answer. Why didn't she want me? What was wrong with me that made her choose to let me go? I carried that my whole life, even when I tried not to think about it, even when I told myself it didn't matter. When I turned 18, I thought about searching for her. Oregon had closed adoption records back then, but there were ways. Private investigators, support groups for adoptees. I thought about it for months, and then I decided not to. I told myself it was because I didn't want to hurt my adoptive parents, that it would feel like a betrayal. But the truth is, I was afraid. I was afraid she wouldn't want to see me. I was afraid I'd find out that giving me up had been easy for her, that she'd moved on and built a life that didn't include me. So I let it go. I got married when I was 23. His name was Tom. We had 2 daughters. I worked as a teacher for 30 years. I had a life, a good life. But every now and then, on my birthday or Mother's Day, I'd think about her. I'd wonder if she thought about me. I'd wonder if she ever regretted it. And I'd feel that same hollow ache I'd felt as a child, the one that never really went away. Tom died 5 years ago, heart attack. After he was gone, I started thinking about my birth mother more often. I don't know why. Maybe it was getting older. Maybe it was being alone. Maybe it was just that I'd run out of distractions. I thought about searching for her again, but by then I was in my 70s, and she would have been in her 90s if she was even still alive. I told myself it was too late. I told myself some questions don't need answers. And then, last December, I got a call from an attorney in Seattle, a man I'd never heard of. He told me his firm was handling the estate of a woman named Margaret Ann Porter, and that she'd left instructions to contact me after her death. He asked if I'd be willing to receive a package she'd left for me. I didn't recognize the name. I asked him who she was. He said, "She was your biological mother." I sat down. I don't remember what I said. I think I asked him if he was sure. He said he was. He said she'd passed away 2 months earlier, in October, at the age of 94. He said she'd left very specific instructions. There was a package. a journal. She wanted me to have it, but only after she was gone. I told him to send it. It arrived a week later, a small box, carefully wrapped. Inside was a leather journal, dark brown, the kind with a strap that buckles on the side. It was old, worn. The pages were yellowed at the edges, and on the first page, in careful handwriting, it said, "For Catherine, my daughter. I'm sorry I couldn't give this to you while I was alive." I sat at my kitchen table and stared at it for I don't know how long. My hands were shaking. I didn't know if I wanted to open it. I didn't know if I could, because once I read it, I'd know. I'd know why she gave me up. I'd know if she ever thought about me. I'd know if I mattered to her, and I wasn't sure I was ready for the answer. But I opened it. The first entry was dated 3 days after I was born, March 14th, 1948. She wrote, "I held you today for the first and last time. They let me hold you for 10 minutes before they took you away. You have dark hair like mine. You have your father's eyes. You didn't cry. You just looked at me like you were trying to memorize my face. I wanted to tell you I was sorry. I wanted to tell you I loved you, but I didn't. I just held you. And then they took you, and I signed the papers, and you were gone." I stopped reading. I put the journal down and cried. I hadn't expected that. I'd expected explanations, justifications, maybe regret. But I hadn't expected her to say she loved me. I hadn't expected her to sound like she didn't want to let me go. I kept reading. The entries weren't daily. Sometimes there'd be weeks between them, sometimes months. But she wrote to me my entire life. When I was 6 months old, she wrote about wondering if I'd started teething, if I was sleeping through the night. When I was 2, she wrote about imagining what my first words might be. When I was 5, she wrote about hoping I was happy, hoping my new parents loved me the way she couldn't. She never used the word couldn't lightly. She explained it over and over in entries spanning years. She was 17 when she got pregnant, unmarried. In 1947, that wasn't just scandalous, it was ruinous. Her parents were deeply religious. When they found out, they sent her away to a home for unwed mothers, 3 states over, where no one knew her. She lived there for 6 months, hidden, ashamed, waiting for me to be born. She wrote about the father, a boy she'd loved, a boy who'd promised to marry her, and then disappeared when she told him she was pregnant. She wrote about how she'd hoped he'd come back, how she'd believed he'd change his mind. He never did. She never saw him again. Her parents gave her a choice, she wrote. She could come home, but only if she gave the baby up. If she kept me, she'd be on her own. No family, no support, no money. She was 17 years old with no education, no job, no way to take care of a child. She wrote, "I wanted to keep you. God, I wanted to keep you, but I didn't know how. I didn't know how to give you the life you deserved. So I made the only choice I thought I could make, and I've regretted it every day since." I read that, and I had to stop again. Because my whole life, I'd imagined her as someone who didn't care, someone who'd made a choice and moved on. But she hadn't moved on. She'd carried me with her every single day. She wrote about what happened after, how she went home and pretended it never happened, how her parents never spoke about it again, like I'd never existed, how she finished high school, went to college, became a nurse, how she met a man and married him when she was 25, how she wanted to tell him about me, but couldn't, how she carried that secret through 40 years of marriage. She wrote about the moments she almost broke. My 10th birthday, my 18th, my wedding day. She didn't say how she knew those dates, but somehow she did. She wrote about imagining what I looked like, what my life was like if I was happy. She wrote about wanting to find me, wanting to see me, but being too afraid. She wrote, "What if you hate me? What if seeing me only hurts you more? What right do I have to walk into your life now, after all these years, and ask for forgiveness?" So she didn't. She stayed away. But she didn't forget. When I was 30, she wrote about seeing a woman in a grocery store who looked like how she imagined I might look. She followed her for 3 aisles, she wrote, just to see her face, just to pretend for a moment that it was me. It wasn't. But she cried in her car for an hour afterward. When I was 45, she wrote about attending a teaching awards ceremony at a local school. She didn't say how she knew I was a teacher, but she did. She sat in the back of the auditorium and watched me receive an award for excellence in education. She wrote, "You spoke about your students, about how teaching is about showing up for people, about being present in their lives. And I sat there and thought about how I'd never shown up for you, how I'd never been present, and I wanted to stand up and tell you I was sorry. But I didn't. I just sat there and watched you, and then I left." She'd been there at my award ceremony, 20 feet away. And I never knew. I kept reading, and the entries became more frequent in her later years. After her husband died, after she retired, she had more time, more space to think. She wrote about regret, about wondering if she'd made the right choice, about whether giving me up had actually given me a better life, or if it had just been an excuse, a way to avoid the hard thing. But she also wrote about the reports she'd received. I didn't understand that at first, but then I found a stack of papers tucked in the back of the journal. Letters, documents. Every few years, starting when I was 5, she'd hired someone to check on me, not to contact me, just to make sure I was okay. There were school photos, report cards, a newspaper clipping from my wedding announcement, a photo of me holding my firstborn daughter. She'd been watching my whole life, from a distance, in secret, making sure I was safe, making sure I was loved. The last entry in the journal was dated 3 weeks before she died. Her handwriting was shaky, harder to read. She wrote, "Catherine, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if giving you this journal is the right thing to do, or if it's just selfish, just me trying to ease my own guilt. But I want you to know that I loved you. I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I loved you when I held you for those 10 minutes. I loved you every birthday, every Christmas, every ordinary day in between. I loved you enough to let you go because I thought that's what love meant. And I've spent my whole life wondering if I was wrong." She ended with this, "I hope you had a good life. I hope your parents loved you the way I wanted to. I hope you're happy. And I hope someday you can forgive me. Not for giving you up, maybe, but for not being brave enough to tell you this while I was still alive." I closed the journal and sat there for a long time. I didn't cry. I'd already cried so much. I just sat there holding this piece of my mother, this record of a love I'd never known existed. For 76 years, I thought I'd been abandoned. I thought I hadn't mattered, but I did. I mattered so much that she carried me with her every single day. I mattered so much that she watched from the shadows, making sure I was okay, even though it must have hurt her to stay away. I mattered so much that she spent 50 years writing to me, even though she was too afraid to send it. And I realized something. She didn't give me up because she didn't love me. She gave me up because she did, because she was 17 and terrified and alone, and she thought giving me to people who could take care of me was the most loving thing she could do. Maybe she was right. Maybe she wasn't. I'll never know. But I know she loved me, and that changes everything. I wish I could have told her that. I wish I could have met her just once and told her I understood. I wish I could have told her she didn't need to be forgiven because there was nothing to forgive. But I can't. She's gone. And I'm left with this journal, these words, this love that was always there but never spoken. If you're carrying a secret, if you're living with regret, if you're too afraid to reach out to someone because you think it's too late, or because you think they won't want to hear from you, please don't wait. Don't spend your life watching from a distance. Don't let fear keep you from saying the things that matter, because one day it will be too late. And the person you're trying to protect, or the person you're too afraid to face, will be left with questions that can't be answered. My mother loved me. I know that now. But I wish I'd known it while she was alive. I wish she'd been brave enough to tell me. And I wish I'd been brave enough to look for her. I'm 76 years old. I just met my mother for the first time through the pages of a journal. And I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I'd met her in person. Don't let that be your story. Don't wait. Say the things that need to be said while there's still time.